Hello there, welcome to the latest edition of The Front Page. I hope it's not too wet wherever you are, but I hope you're stimulated by all the exciting racing and racing news that is taking place at the moment. And we are going to discuss some of that on this programme today. We'll be talking about planned changes to some races at the Cheltenham Festival. We'll be talking about City of Troy's bid for glory at the Breeders' Cup and more ominous news about the black market and racing betting. My name is Lee Mottershead and I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, James Stevens in the studio. Hello, James.
Hello, Lee. All well?
Good, thank you. And at home in Ireland, David Jennings. Hello to you, David.
Hi, Lee. Good to be here.
And it's good to have you here too, David. James, first of all, you've been well. You've been in the Lake District.
I have, yep. I've been to third Saturday following the beloved Newport County, whose defeats of 4-1, 4-0 and 2-0. So, yeah, I can't wait for the jump season to start so I don't have to watch any more football.
But surely it's going to get better if you've started like that.
Yeah, I'm not full of optimism, but we'll wait and see. But, yeah, hopefully it can get better. We'll see. Trust the system.
Yeah, sounds good. And DJ, your weekend, pleasant, demanding, what?
Demanding, very demanding. Aoife was at a 40th in France for the weekend, so I had the kids all weekend, and I'm absolutely shattered. I will never ever complain again about like when she complains to me about having the kids, because they're great, but you need to be fit, Lee. Yeah, and I'm probably not the best father in the world with regard to like setting rules and stuff. So my idea of happiness for the kids is just basically giving them everything they want. So we went to the cinema yesterday morning to see the Despicable Me 4, which actually, even if I didn't have kids, I would have actually enjoyed myself, because it was actually very funny. I enjoyed that. Brought them to Smith's. I don't know if you have Smith's in England, but yeah, toy shop, yeah. And I was like, anything for an easy life. This will give me an hour. It'll clear an hour. Keep them in there for an hour. So they got about like 5 presents each. So that took up half the day, and got them down to bed about 9 o'clock last night.
DJ, if you need a third child, I am available, because it sounds fantastic being one of yours. Okay, let us start then with the Cheltenham Festival. We knew that Cheltenham and the Jockey Club were looking at making changes to the race programme, to race conditions at the festival this year. And Peter Scargill of the Racing Post had an exclusive last week in which he revealed 2 of the main changes that we are expecting to be announced in the probably relatively near future. One of those was that the Turner's Novices Chase, a Grade 1 Novices Chase inaugurated at the festival in 2011, is set to be axed and replaced with an open novice handicap chase similar to one that was previously run at the Cheltenham Festival with a rating barrier. The second expected change is that the cross-country chase, which since 2016 has been run as a conditions event, will revert to its former handicap status as it was prior to 2016. That news, as I say, came from Peter Scargill. He quoted the sponsor of the Turner's Novices Chase, who was expressing disappointment with the plan to change that race from a Grade 1 to a handicap. The news hasn't come officially from Cheltenham or the Jockey Club, although we are expecting more news on changes to the Cheltenham Festival. Or at this stage, it hasn't been said when those changes will be announced. So for now, all we have is the news about the Turners and the cross-country chase. James, you for or against?
For, very much for. First and foremost, changes were needed. I think the results at the festival, the amount of odds-on favourites, the sort of general vibe about the meeting hadn't quite been there. And those 2, I mean, let's stick with the Novice Chase division. It's an ongoing problem that there aren't enough top quality horses, and things like the Novice Chase and Novice Hurdle division, particularly Novice Chase, really stretches that out, because it's horses. It's a very small pool of horses, and to be able to have 3-4 options really of those open races, it means that division has to be pretty large to sufficiently fill those races. And whether it's 2 miles, 4 miles, 3 miles, that middle gap is an easy step. And for too long it had been the case whereby Horses can duck and dive. We've talked about this for so long, and I think this is the right thing to do. Look, a good horse can still run in that handicap, and that is exciting.
If it's an open handicap, yeah, they can, can't they?
Exactly. I mean, if you take, this year, there's a sense of irony about this whole thing, because last year it was probably the race of a festival.
11 runners, great, yeah.
Yeah, and just a brilliant finish. Yeah. But you go back the year before that, Stage Star won it, and then he won the Paddy Power last season. So the idea of this is just going to completely wipe that out, it's not necessarily true. I think it's a sensible step. I think it will make that race more competitive, and it will boost the Arkle, it will boost the Brown Advisory. There'll be better races for it, which is exactly what's needed. Balancing this pattern isn't easy. You know it yourself, Lee. You want to be aspirational. You don't want to be too reactive, because there will be years where there's lots of good novice chase and the years where there's not, and you can't keep ducking dive. But I think the patterns over a period of time suggest it's sensible, and the cross country, an absolute no-brainer for me. I had no idea why you'd had all these great cross-country races whereby you could look at the horses and say, okay, well, you got to know the form a little bit. That's what I like about the early Cheltenhams. You sort of work out the form. But then when it was no longer a handicap, it almost just took it spoiled it a little bit, because you were getting to know the handicap system, you're getting to know who was good, but then you had these horses which were rated 160 taking them on. You just said, well, they're probably not going to win this race anyway. So I think not only will that cross-country improve the festival, it'll improve the earlier race as well. An absolute no-brainer, that one.
Goodness, DJ. Such positivity from James Stevens. I've got to say, I'm really positive about the changes too. I would have been happy had the turners never been introduced in the first place. And the change to the cross country, to me, again, makes as much sense as it does to James. But we learned during the week that Eddie O'Leary of Jigginstown House Stud, of course, who's had great success in the race, most notably with Tiger Roll, wasn't so happy about that particular change, although he did support the turners change. Yeah,
and he makes a valid point. I'll start by saying I am for the changes, but Eddie does make a valid point, and you could be on one side or the other. I think with the cross country, if we start with that, like, it did completely change complexion, like utterly, like to go from, Big Shoe with winning for Barry Cash and Peter Marr in Ireland, like a trainer who specialises in that division and is a farmer and all this kind of stuff, to go from that smaller segment of trainers who have this magical chance to win a race at the Cheltenham Festival, to turn that into Delta Work v Tiger Roll, Manila Indo. It went from, as I said in my comment piece after it was revealed, like, I'm not sure the cross-country chase should be the place for testimonials for these former Gold Cup winners in Manila Indo's case, and former proper Grade 1 horses. Like, we probably, you would like to think that there still could be a decent handicap or two in them if that's the way they want to go, rather than, just basically blowing the field apart. And we saw that with Delta Work and Tiger Roll. I see Eddie's point, and I do see there would be no such thing as Tiger Roll if, there was no cross-country chase. And that's what, rejuvenated Tiger Roll. It was the cross-country chase that really got him going. So, but Tiger Roll is probably once in a lifetime type of thing. I don't know if that's going to happen again, where a horse like Tiger Roll will come along and will be rejuvenated by the cross-country chase. So I just think we need more kind of fairy tales at Cheltenham. We need more chance of something unexpected happening. We need more chance of, feel good stories. And I think changing the cross country back to a handicap does give us that, and does give, the Martin Keatleys or, the Peter Marrs or those type of trainers a chance to win the race again, whereas they had absolutely no chance whatsoever of winning the race the way it had become. It's going to lack quality, and you could potentially get a horse rated, 90 over fences or something winning it, who could just be a cross-country specialist. So that's just the way it's going. But I think I am for it. As regards the turners, I'm certainly for that. Now, I do obviously up in the ante with Johnny Deneen, and Johnny was on our other show, the Good Morning show on not Good Morning. It is actually called The Morning Post. I knew there was a morning in there.
You do so many shows, DJ. So many shows.
I've been on it a million times. I can't even remember the name of it. The Morning Post. He was on it on Saturday morning, and he disagreed. He said, what's going to happen now is everybody thinks they're going to go either Arkle or Brown Advisory, but what's actually going to happen now, according to Johnny, is that that horses will actually skip Cheltenham and either go for, the 2.5 mile race at Aintree or the 2.5 mile race at Fairyhouse, which still unbelievably people seem to call the Power Gold Cup, even though it hasn't been the Power Gold Cup for about a million years. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's easy saying that now, and Cheltenham gets so much criticism, but if you're coming into February and you have a horse like, I'll give you an example, Firefox, right, who I think could potentially win the Arkle this year. Like Firefox, you'd imagine would be your ideal kind of 2.5 mile chaser. But do you think Noel Moran and Gordon Elliott are going to sit down in February and go, okay, the Turners is not there. He's a 2.5 mile horse. I know he has form over 2 miles. Will we skip the Arkle maybe where he's 7-2 or 4-1 and wait for Aintree or Fairyhouse? I just can't see it. I can't see horses who are maybe 10-1 or shorter and anti-postless. I can't see them missing an opportunity to win at Cheltenham to wait for Aintree. I know Paul Nicholls has done it in the past, plenty of occasions, but I do think this move will see more competitive Arkles and more competitive Brown advisories. As I said, like Factify was 8-13 last season. He wouldn't have been 8-13 if the first two home, Grey Dawning and the Nicholls horse who escapes me at the moment, if they had ran in the Brown advisory, he wouldn't have been 8-13. He would have had a harder race. So I do think these are good changes. I think they're changes that were needed. Looking forward to seeing the rest of the changes. I think all three of us here would agree the ideal scenario here is for the Cheltenham Festival to go back to 3 days and for us to have 21 races. But that is never going to happen. I've spoke to Ian about it. I've spoke to loads of people about it. It's never going to happen. So people who come on social media channels and say, we need to go back to 3 days, we need to make it, we all want that. I think almost everybody, apart from bookmakers and various different people in the industry who make money out of the revenue from betting, want that, okay? But it's never going to happen. So it's literally the stupidest argument in the world to say it should go back to 3 days, because it's never going to happen. So just forget that. Try and get on board with the changes. And so far, I think they have been positive.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. There will not be a 3-day festival again. I mean, it wasn't long ago they were looking at a 5-day festival. And commercially, the festival is so crucial to the Jockey Club. They couldn't afford to go back to a 3-day festival. And we've seen how a falling attendance again at this year's festival has impacted prize money across the year on Jockey Club race courses. James, just 2 points, just picking up there. In relation to the Turners, when Peter Scargill was quoting Paul Davies, the managing director of Turners, who was disappointed about the plans, he said, ultimately, I think the Cheltenham Festival should be about the best competing against the best. Problem with the Turners is it stops the best competing against the best, because the best have 3 options for Grade 1 Novice Chase Glory instead of 2 options. And the point that DJ was referencing there about Eddie O'Leary and the cross-country chase, again, I think he's right. I think Eddie's right in the sense that you can see the other point of view. But I think Eddie's argument that the race was dying on its feet before the change is wholly wrong. If you look at the final running as a handicap, there were 16 runners. It was a competitive handicap, and the winner was owned by Jigginstown House Stud. So it wasn't in a desperate position before. No,
it's not. And interesting comments about Tiger Roll, because if you were to think about the majority of trainers in the country that had, say, Tiger Roll, a Delta work, they wouldn't be going anywhere near a cross country without. The idea is that horse should be in the Gold Cup, and with all due respect, Tiger Roll's rating and given what he achieved in the Grand National, you can make a case for he was a massive absentee in the Gold Cup for years. I completely agree that it did make his winning, but just because he'd have to carry weight and beat horses, he'd probably beat giving weight away anyway. So I completely disagree with that. The other point about this turn is it is a little bit ironic. To say the best versus the best in what is considered one of the weak Grade 1s. Interesting to hear Johnny Dean's comments on the Morning Post. I can certainly see that logic, and I can see that trainers may perhaps look towards Aintree, but a lot of trainers might look towards Aintree, and suddenly that might become more competitive, and then the Arkle might be. So I wouldn't be too reading into that. The only sort of negative I can draw from this whole change is that it might make campaigning of those 2.5 mile novice chases, just that little bit different. They may not want to run them as many times in order to sort of leave a bit away from the handicapper. And there are a few races in that early part of a season which are usually quite small fields, sort of the Rising Stars at the 2.5 mile at Newbury. So perhaps they may suffer the consequence of those good quality horses not quite want to giving it away, or those high potential horses giving it away. But all in all, it's going to be a really good handicap. And I loved that 2.5 mile novice chase. So it was a good week. I was very happy about that.
One thing, Lee,
news.
that's going to be very interesting, and I've been giving it plenty of thought in the last week, was like Ballyburn. I think it probably was cut and dry that Ballyburn would go over fences, and I think he probably still will. But you're taking away his natural target. His ultimate aim for the season is now gone. The race that, you know, Willie obviously would have won with Gallop and the Champs, and that sort of a route, it's gone now. So you just wonder, it's just another small reason for potentially Ballyburn staying over hurdles, which I don't think will happen. But I do think the fact that it's gone will keep the odd horse over hurdles. You know, if it's a 50-50 call, that, you know, toss of a coin. Now that the Turners is gone for a few of these horses, like the likes of Irish Point, you'd imagine would be a natural to go over fences, and potentially, I know he's won over 3 miles, but you think the Turners would be the race for him? And then you see with Irish Point, like the races he could run in this season and the races he could mop up, because if they kind of split Irish Point into Hupu, they could win almost every long distance hurdle or hurdle from 2.5 miles onwards with those two horses, the grade ones. So I just wonder, would they be tempted to keep Irish Point over hurdles because the Turners is gone? I'm not saying it would be the overall reason, but it just could be another small little reason. And when you add these up, I think there will be a couple more horses staying over hurdles potentially, that because the Turners is gone. Maybe you disagree.
No. But when you look at how little strength in depth has been in the champion hurdle in recent years, that might not necessarily be a bad thing. DJ, one last question then. So with Ballyburn, if I was saying to you now, which race, you know, assuming all being well, touch all wood, he gets the Cheltenham Festival in 2025, which race do you think he will run in at the festival?
God, it's 1 to 100. Surely he'll run in the Brown Advisory. Like, he's not a 2 miler. I know he won over 2 miles at the Dublin Racing Festival, but and My Way to Solden won an Arkle, so you could point to that. But God, Ballyburn to me, low head carriage, everything about him, you know, would scream, you know, future Gold Cup horse. So I'd be shocked if he went down the Arkle route. Just one small thing on this. I did the comment piece on the Turners, and I said, one of the points I made was that if there was no Turners, we would have had a Undeso against Vautour in the Arkle that year. And I got a message from Ruby Walsh that night and said, no, you wouldn't. Vautour would have won the Brown Advisory. So that just gives you the Ballyburn conundrum as well. Vautour obviously was a 2 miler and won the Supreme, but Ruby reckons he would have won what was then the RSA. So maybe it'll be the same with Ballyburn. Who knows?
Well, I think what it does do, it makes all those discussions around targets that much more interesting than they would have been without these changes. Okay, we move from talking about some very good jumps horses to talking about one very, very good flat horse. DJ.
Yes, City of Troy, who I'm hoping to see in Del Mar, and hopefully gets there in one piece. Look, a lot has been said and written about this subtle gallop, and we actually have footage on the show thanks to Sam Hart. We can see City of Troy here on our screens, and he's just been loaded here now. And what you can take from the gallop, look, you can take what you want from the gallop. You know, the horses he was running against, you know, the likes of Democracy and these horses, they're fair 80 rated horses that, you know, he's doing what you expect them to do, and they are specifically put in this gallop to do a job, and the job is not to perform to their best of their ability. The form is to make City of Troy perform to the best of his ability. And on the break is the important thing here, because I thought he broke fine and broke grand, but like, he wasn't absolutely electric away. Like, he was fine. It was perfectly respectable. But just imagine if those were 4 American horses against him. Like, right here, he's a length down. So he probably will need to break even a little bit sharper than that. Everything in the gallop was was perfectly smooth. This here, I'd imagine this was part of the plan. Maybe might get a tiny bit of kickback here. I know there's not that much kickback there anymore, but might get a tiny bit. Racing, in between horses and coming between horses. I know Aidan spoke afterwards about how his route was planned, that he'd have somebody on the outside of him, somebody on the inside, and all this kind of stuff around in the bend. So, because you have to remember, he did get he didn't see another horse basically in the Juddmonte International on his last start. So everything you see here coming up to the bend, going between the horses, it was all planned. I personally thought he moved beautifully. I'm not a great judge of these type of things, and there are people who will be far better versed than me on his stride pattern and his stride length and his action on the surface. Obviously, it's a completely different surface to what he's going to encounter at Del Mar, but yet it's not grass, so we get some kind of inkling as to what he's going to be like. But from here on in, I thought it was perfectly respectable. I thought he lengthened quite well. I thought he was asked to do plenty, and
he was very straight, DJ, wasn't he? This is the thing that I was most impressed by, his straightness. There was no sign of hanging
very
at
straight,
all.
No hanging at all, and he looked even. You've got to love his head carriage there. Like, he just wants it. Like, and I know, we kind of half laugh at Aidan when he's saying about he never gets tired and all this kind of stuff. But the more you see of him, the more you kind of think Aidan is talking the truth, because he just seems to just want it. Like, if you had him as a footballer, you'd imagine he's a kind of a Roy Keane type, and that he will do anything to get the result that he needs. So I think that's good. A couple of things on this. The gallop as a whole, okay. Obviously, Southwell at the moment is nothing like Del Mar, so people are kind of saying this is a charade, and obviously it is great PR for City of Troy, and we are trying to create a legend here. And if he does win the Breeders' Cup Classic, we will have, probably after Sea the Stars and Frankel, if he does win the Classic, this is probably our next horse after those two. And he will, in our lifetime, and certainly in my racing lifetime, he might evolve into number 3 in that list. But I just think that the reaction on social media and the reaction to people in the industry that you talk to, and they kind of half ridicule and laugh at what went on at Southwell. And I get that it's a PR stunt, but I just think sometimes in racing, nobody is happy any of the time. You cannot please people, because what we're saying is flat racing, the one thing, we have no relationship with these horses, and they're here for a year or two and then they're gone, and it's not like jump racing where you get a kind of a relationship with a horse. Here you're actually given the public a chance to get close to a horse and get to see him and get to see basically stuff that goes on behind the scenes in front of their own eyes, and they're getting to see it at Southwell. And it might have been, racing wise, very little got out of it potentially. I don't know what Aidan's a genius, so why are we to question the reasoning for going to Southwell? I think it was more the occasion and a away day and a crowd and all that kind of stuff. But then you see, like, I seen a clip on Twitter, or X as it's called now. There was I think her name was Susie. If you go in and have a look, there's a picture of her who got a painting of City of Troy, and she went to the workout at Southwell, brought the picture, got Ryan Moore to sign it. It's just, I think it's a painting. You can't really tell in the Twitter clip, but Ryan signed it and had a conversation with her, and like signed it lovely and the name of the horse and everything. And we're in racing, okay? So we this kind of stuff is kind of half normal to us, seeing these horses, and you might get a trip to Ballydoyle and you kind of half take it for granted. But because we're in a bubble, you don't really get to almost feel what other people are feeling. And I just saw that clip and I was like, there are people out there who, the highlight of their summer or the highlight of their year will be seeing City of Troy, or the highlights of somebody's sporting, week or whatever, or month or year could be going to Southwell to see City of Troy. So I think it's foolish sometimes to ridicule something because maybe it doesn't mean a lot to you, because I think it does sometimes mean a lot to other people. And, if going to Southwell for a racecourse gallop, if it makes the horse more popular, that's good for racing. And I can see the negative impact of bringing City of Troy to Southwell. I thought it was great, and I thought it was I thought there were far more positives than negatives to be taken out of it. And on that, just about how people are never happy in racing, I just seen like Constitution Hill, Nicky Henderson at his owner's open day yesterday, and obviously the big comment from the from the morning was, if Constitution Hill was fit and he ran the champion hurdle, he would have been having his dinner by the time the race was finished, given that Lucia finished so close to State Man. And then you go onto social media and people are going, oh my God, what a stupid statement. This is ridiculous, blah, 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 giving out stink about Nicky and all this. Racing is boring a lot of the time. This is what we want. We want statements like, Constitution Hill would be having his dinner. He'd hammer all these in his sleep. And then we want Willie Mullins to come back and say, well, come over to Ireland and take us on, you big chicken, yeah. This is what we need. We need more, it's obviously all in good taste now, but we need more banter. We need more almost clashes. I'm not saying it should become like boxing or anything like that, where you have the pre-boxing press conference. I don't mean that, but I just think we need more stuff to make it less boring. And I think comments like Nicky's, if it does get a reaction then from the State Man camp, I just think that's great, and I think that makes the sport less boring. But as I said, nobody is happy any of the time in racing.
Well, especially DJ, if you look at what you were writing about in your column on Saturday about the Irish Champions Festival over the weekend, and the disappointing numbers they had the previous weekend at Leopardstown and the Curragh, surely part of the mission for Irish flat racing, but for the sport all over, wherever you are, we need to get more people genuinely interested in it. And things like what happened at Southwell, things like people queuing outside the Gosden's yard and Sir Mark Prescott's yard yesterday for the Newmarket Open Day, that's exactly what we need. And to be cynical and rubbishing those sort of initiatives just seems crazy.
Absolutely, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's I did that column on the Irish Champions Festival, which is an incredible weekend, and I was just deflated at various stages over the weekend, hence I wrote the column. I think what scares me is this is 2024, and I just talking to people at Leopardstown and seeing the empty spaces and watching the Champion Stakes in the stand and nobody being within 15 or 20 yards of me, and just I know we're reminiscing about stuff that'll never happen again. I know people have access to watching racing now, and people have so much going on in their busy lives. We're never going to get back to the crowds of the 90s or whatever. But I watched the economics race in the stand in exactly the same spot that I watched Denoli winning his Hennessy, as it was back then, is the famous day of winning the Irish Hennessy. And I was like, oh my God, like that day I was only a kid, but I just remember thinking I could actually be suffocated here. And I know that's a ridiculous comparison because it's Denoli and because it's Irish jump racing. But I was like, oh my God, if this is 2024 and this is the Irish Champion Stakes, what on earth is it going to be like in 2034? Like, is there going to be 2,000 people here? And I just think if we don't do something now to future-proof the racing, I think we're in serious trouble. So hence that was why I wrote the column, which was probably a little bit harsh, but we just need to do something. We need to make flat racing more popular, and we can't just go, it's Ireland and jump racing is always going to be the number one in Ireland. That's fine, we get that. But we just need to do more to ensure that flat racing is more popular than it is at the moment.
Especially when you have the world's most successful flat trainer.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got the cream of the crop, and an engaging cream of the crop as well, because I think sometimes we take it for granted that Aidan is open and he gives you whatever you want, and he does sell the sport in the best way, especially in the last couple of years. I think Aidan realizes that it's an entertainment industry and we need to be selling the sport more than we are. So yeah, I just hope we can learn lessons from mistakes made in the past, and I hope there is a serious future in Irish flat racing and that people will actually want to go to watch these horses.
Absolutely. Before we move on, just ask you both the same question. James, will he win the Breeders' Cup Classic, City of Troy?
I'd love him to, but if I was betting, I would probably be more safe and go for the American. Just a couple of points that DJ's made.
Yeah.
Completely brilliant to see that gallop at Southwell. We're very lucky to have a job. I love stables, behind the scenes, that sort of access. And it works in sport. If you go to a big Premier League match, you'll have hundreds of people queuing just to see the bus turn up and players walk off with massive headphones. And so the idea of behind the scenes is fantastic. And hopefully this can be a catalyst for that, and the events of the Open weekend really, really good. And I'm so with DJ's points about the sort of, not sort of trash talking, but the fighting talk. That's what it's about, you know. This is what jumps fans are about. You go to the pubs in Cheltenham and it's about that horse can't win a Gold Cup or that horse can't do that. And that's what jump racing is about. It's these same old characters year after year coming. They've got their individual characters, the races they should have won, the races they didn't win, the ground they like. That's what racing is. Jump racing makes it so popular. The fact you build these relationships years on years, and that bit of punch and that bit of character from those people around them is exactly what makes a sport. What makes sport sell is real characters and getting to know their personalities and that sort of side of it. That's exactly what will help this. And I'm not saying everyone needs to go out and start being something they're not. Not, of course they should. But when you get things like this, it shouldn't be, just as DJ says, you shouldn't just discredit somebody because they're giving their point of view. Really, really good. And just one final point about the Breeders' Cup. Huge, huge shame it's not on ITV. I did a Weekender column last week. This could be the great Breeders' Cup for Britain and Ireland. I mean, we've got favourites in every turf race bar two, one of which is the American sprinter, the name escapes me, but Bradsell could be going there believing. And the other one is where the French geldings are going to turn up, given they can't stay at home. We won't go into that one.
I don't mind.
Amazing that such a strong year for British and Irish runners. And it might just be 2 days where, for all of our ups and downs in racing in this part of the world, we look really good in the rest of the world, and maybe we can fool them all that everything's rosy.
Yeah, James, I'll always have the geldings debate happily, but we've done that one before. Yeah, show me about the ITV news. I mean, it was sold as a programming clash. I suppose the harsh reality goes back to what you were talking about before, DJ. Is it the other realities? If you look at the number of people who watch things like the Breeders' Cup and the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe on mainstream TV, the numbers ain't big. There is not a huge audience that is clamouring to watch this sort of thing on mainstream television, which is another reason why we need to heed the advice that you laid out in the column. DJ, finally, City of Troy, does he win or does he not win the Classic?
You know me, Lee, I have an opinion on absolutely everything. I have absolutely no idea. I mean, none. I have not got a clue whether he's going to win by 10 lengths, whether he'll be tailed off. I have no idea. I don't... I obviously know the rivals that he's running against, and I've watched a lot of the trials and stuff. But I'm not an expert in anything in life, and people watching that will be known. And I have plenty of people on Twitter who constantly tell me I talk rubbish all of the time. And if I did give an overall opinion on whether City of Troy will win the Breeders' Cup Classic or not, I would be talking complete and utter waffle, because I have no idea. I think it's a race that you couldn't really have a bet in with any degree of confidence. I think it's just one that you have to just lap up and just enjoy it, and just enjoy potentially seeing history, because like I'm going, and it's like the thought of being there to see something that might never happen again in our lifetime. I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, bigging up our coverage in advance. DJ will be there throughout Breeders' Cup week. Just one thing I would say, DJ, about Del Mar, this thing about the surf meets the turf, it's a complete fallacy. The surf doesn't get anywhere near the turf. So when you go
thanks,
there...
Lee, just ruined it for me already.
You know, it's an amazing place.
I won't bother going now.
Amazing place, but the surf does not meet the turf.
Okay.
That's all right.
I can't surf anyway.
Listen, practice it, you'll be amazing, I'm sure. Before we move on to our final story, I want to encourage you to consider Racing Post Insider. Welcome back. One last part of the front page to go now, and it's a very different sort of story. It's introduced by James Stevens.
It is, and it's a worrying story regarding a report published on Thursday which says more than £4 billion has been staked with illegal betting firms each year. This is, of course, relating to the black market and a trend of money towards that industry accelerating, mostly because of affordability checks. Just to go through some of the numbers, in 2020 it was £2.8 billion, and that had doubled previously from the previous figure. So we're up from 2.8 billion to 4 billion, which is a huge rise. So this report was done by Frontier Economics, commissioned by the Betting and Gaming Council, and by the sounds of it, it's quite clear that affordability is the main sort of concern here. A really interesting quote from their chief executive, who said that the measures which are laid out as part of the white paper would give a leg up to black market operators. That's about as crystal clear as you can get for how big an issue this is going to be. The BHA, they urge government to carefully consider this report. Just a quote here: "This is why we continue to make the case that any rollout of financial risk checks," which are what they're calling affordability checks in the white paper, must be fully frictionless as part of our collective efforts to prevent the growth of the black market. The PGC also said that it was depriving the Treasury of 335 million of revenue, which is just a sign of how big an issue it is. And I mean, from a racing perspective, there's a number of things here. Obviously, the rise of a black market, shows, as we know, that affordability checks are pushing people towards illegal betting to get away from measures and friction, checks and whatnot. But also, there's an issue here from, I don't know if it's sort of morality or anything like that, but essentially there are no checks about safety or players' concerns when it comes to black market firms. It's quite simply the Wild West, So all these measures which are essentially being brought in to help customers and make gambling more safe, it's pushing them towards a place where there is no safety. So how effective those measures are is really under question as well. But from a racing perspective, it's just that another sign of how big a problem this is going to be, because the figures don't lie and they're very worrying. Yeah,
the figures are clearly worrying. Obviously, these are claims and estimates because the black market isn't something that's recorded officially. But the rise of those numbers is stark. Just referencing the BHA, earlier in the year, they repeated their view that for every £10 million of gross betting win that moves away from the licensed market, racing loses £1.5 million in media rights and £1 million in levy funding. So it's hugely costly to racing. But again, in a piece that we did earlier in the year, a special report on the black market, a number of industry experts just highlighted how the real danger with affordability checks is it does exactly what you said. It pushes people into the unlicensed arena where there are no checks and where people are much more vulnerable. This is clearly an ongoing story with the trial, and we await to see what will happen as we move into 2025. But clearly a worrying situation, and looks more worrying as a result of those numbers that came out in this latest report.
Massively. I think it's just the latest sign of how big a problem this is. And look, the white paper, affordability, it's been nothing short of a nightmare, really, given what's happened with government and the changing many gambling ministers we've had, and of course a new government have come in. The important thing is that this is made clear about how big a threat it is for racing, but also gambling and as a hobby. The only other point that I should make is the Gambling Commission did say it is extremely active in terms of tackling black market. It's taken down 221 websites this in the period since the last report, which is 10 times more than that previous one. So clearly they are sort of addressing the issue. It's not just being allowed to fester. There's clearly work being done to stop this. However, clearly with £4 billion going into it, it's a major problem. And as you say, I mean, racing needs that money. We know about the media rights. We've discussed it in here. We know about prize money, issues like that. This is a huge issue. This is a huge issue for racing that they have to deal with first and foremost. It's a huge problem, and its finances are going to be hit.
And DJ, presumably there's no logical reason why the black market won't be a rising threat in Ireland as it is in Britain.
absolutely, yeah, big time. I think it's interesting. I always think when these reports come out, it just spells it out. So you kind of talk about it and you kind of get your estimates and all that, and then you see a report like this and you go, oh, wow, like, so it just proves a lot of points. And yeah, sure, it's like we all know the way things are going and how the black market is becoming, more and more attractive to an awful lot of people. And, hopefully reports like this will have some effect going forward, because that's all you can hope.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that brings to an end our debates on this week's edition. I just now have to decide who has the winning story. Clearly, in terms of numbers and potential ramifications, the black market is colossal and would win any of these debate programmes. City of Troy, the gallop at Southwell was a huge talking point, and hopefully it will be an even bigger talking point, City of Troy, when we get to the Breeders' Cup Classic. But we're almost at the start of the core jump season, and therefore I think the Cheltenham story will probably win, but I'm not going to take it myself. Pete Scargill had the scoop. So although it's the winning story, I'm not taking it, James.
I'm not buying that at all. I'm not buying that at all.
Giving it to Pete Scargill.
You can tell yourself, Lee, maybe.
No, I am.
Well played. I admire the way you've done that there.
That's very sweet of you, thank you. DJ, what's your week got in store? Anything exciting? Anything lovely?
No, work. Working. I'm trying to think now what
Kerry
is
National?
actually in which?
Kerry National?
No, I'm not in Listowel, which is a pity because a load of my mates are actually down there on the Lash, and I would have liked to have been down there. I think we've got Conor Fennelly, Justin O'Hanlon, and Richie Forrestal are down there, I think, this week. But we have next weekend our own local Harvest Festival in Dunchaplin in Meath is on as well. So
and James, what's your week like?
Good, yep. The snooker's on in Cheltenham this week, which
Nice.
is very exciting. And more exciting than that, I'm going to get to see Golden Ace with Jeremy Scott this week. So forget Constitution Hill, forget State Man. Come on, Golden Ace. That's the camp I'm firmly in.
Go on, Golden Ace. So great weeks looking ahead for James and for DJ. I hope whatever you're doing will be enormously pleasurable and hopefully dry as well. We will be back next week. Until then, have a great week. Bye-bye.